All right. Hello, everyone. Today is September 28, 2017. This is the bi-weekly meeting of the Storage Special Interest Group for Kubernetes. As a reminder, this meeting is public, recorded, and published on YouTube. Today on the agenda, we are going to be doing planning for Q4. We have a demo from Eric, and we're going to be discussing the face-to-face and a couple other items on the agenda. Feel free to add to the agenda as we go. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. All right, so first thing is 1.9 planning. We are at the end of Q3. We're starting Q4. 1.8 shipped yesterday, Wednesday. For planning, we have a new PM, Palak Dalal, who is going to be working with SIG Storage and reporting back to the PM SIG. It used to be Matt DeLeo, but Matt DeLeo is working with other SIGs now. Palak, do you want to take over? I'll stop sharing my screen and you can share yours.
Yeah, thanks, Saad. Let me just start sharing my screen for the planning scripts on spreadsheet. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Palak, your voice is a little soft.
Is this better by any chance?
Yeah,
Hello?
that's better.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks everyone for filling in the feature entries. I just want to go through each of these line items, assign a priority, find owners for the missing features, and then have planning for 1.9. So let me just get started with the first one, the block volume support. Do we have the owners, Erin, Scott, or Mitsuho on the call by any chance?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Can you just talk a bit about it and what priority would you assign for it?
High priority? Is that an option?
So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. This would be P1 for the group this quarter.
Got it. And it said that it'll take more than one release, but we're still targeting alpha and 1.9?
Correct. We have a phased release for it, which is notated in the design document with which features will go into which part of it, the alpha being the bulk of the implementation with the secondaries, including dynamic provisioning.
All right, perfect. Moving on, unless you have anything.
Question on the phone. This is Tushar from VMware. So this is the first time I'm attending a planning meeting. So can somebody please clarify what is the goal is? I mean, what the goal is? I mean, how many projects we are planning? What is the priority? How do we suggest if we have any suggestions?
So if you have suggestions, please jump onto the planning spreadsheet and add an item at the bottom. We're going to go through these item by item, and we're going to try to figure out priorities for them and assignees for them as we go. As a collective group, we're going to talk through them. I think for some of these items, we've been working on them for multiple quarters already, so their priority is pretty obvious. For some of the new items, which we may not be familiar with, we're going to ask you to kind of explain what the feature is, and then try to figure out what the priority is, and hopefully assign someone to actually work on it. And for folks who are new to the SIG, this is an opportunity to step in and to contribute. This is where we figure out what we're going to be working on, who's going to be working on it, who's going to be reviewing it, and that kind of thing.
Thank you, sir. So one last question. So basically, is the plan going to be frozen at the end of this meeting, or is it still?
We're gonna call it. We're not gonna freeze it right now. It's not going to be frozen until the feature freeze date for Kubernetes, which tends to be about 2 or 3 weeks into the quarter. I'm not sure what it is this time. So we have until then to revise it. But we should have something nailed down before the new quarter begins, which is October 1st, next week. But we will be able to revise this at least in the next storage SIG meeting.
Thank you.
No problem. Back to you, Palak.
Okay, sounds good. Moving on to the next feature request we have, which is implement scheduler and binding logic for local persistence storage support. and the local storage is still in alpha. Do we have Michelle on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. So
Okay.
actually there's a few things we're tackling with regards to local storage in 1.9. I made a comment in the notes. There's like 3 major things we're doing. I don't know if each of those needs to be a separate line item or should they all be bundled together.
Got it. What is your estimate of time required for the bundled item?
So I mean, all of this is estimated to be worked on this quarter, but for the full local storage feature, it's going to take multiple quarters.
Michelle, I think we should probably have line items for all the stuff that we're going to commit to this quarter, so it's easier to track.
Okay, then okay. So then we can keep this line item just for the scheduler work, in which case I'm hoping to get an alpha implementation out in 1.9.
Perfect. Is there anything else that we're going to commit to from the local storage side for 1.9?
Yeah, there are 2 more things that we're working on. The second thing is enabling raw block for local volumes. And then the third item is the security hardening that we're going to do for the local provisioner.
Okay, sounds good. I added the raw block at the bottom of the list, and the security hardening, I believe, is already on the list.
Oh, okay, great.
Perfect. What priority do you want to assign to the scheduler item?
I would call it a 1.
Got it. Because it has a strong dependency on the local storage as well, right?
Well, this is the main thing. This is the main feature that is preventing local storage from moving to beta.
Got it. Sounds good to me.
Hey guys, this is Luis. Could you mind in the display bringing down the window, that the zoom window on the right side? The spreadsheet is cropped to the left.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem. Thank you.
Wait, I'm just trying to. Is this better?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
just please zoom in some.
Zoom in. Okay.
I mean, in the 100% on the view.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, maybe like 150. That'll be perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. Michelle, do you want to assign priority to raw block, or do we want to come back to it later?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and fill that in. I guess, let's see. I would call raw block either a 1 or 2.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of this work depends on the actual block feature to get in. So there's some.
I'd call it a 2. I think if we don't end up getting it, we don't need to stress about that, at least this quarter.
Cool. Sounds good. Moving to the next item, enable containerization of mount dependencies. Do we have the owner here, Jan? Anyone else? Okay, great.
Me.
Can you talk a bit about the feature and what the priority should be according to you?
The feature is about containerizing things like iSCSI ADM, UDF, and RBD utilities that are currently run on the host, so we could run them in a container. And the priority, I don't know, it's a high priority for me. I don't know how priority is for the SIG.
I would probably call this a P2. I think this is a really nice feature to have. It's going to make end-to-end testing of the existing entry volume plugins much easier, and it'll also make it easier to add support for these volume plugins where you don't necessarily have the ability to install the dependencies on the host OS. That said, if we don't end up making it for any reason, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Jan, do you agree as P2?
Yeah, of course. It can slip another release.
I hope not, but.
Thank you. Sounds good. So, Saad, do you want to speak up out of tree CSI volume plugin?
Yeah, so the hope this quarter is to we're going to have the face-to-face meeting in a couple of weeks. I'm hoping to send out a design doc probably a week before that. And then hopefully we can finalize on the design and start working on implementation. And I would like to drive this to alpha this quarter. That would mean a new CSI volume plugin being introduced in Tree that would enable CSI volume drivers natively in Kubernetes. There are a lot of people that were very interested in helping with this. I've listed them as owners in the owner section. I think we have enough people who are interested in actually helping develop. We probably need more people to help review it than anything else. We've got Brad and Steve, but I think I can probably pull Michelle or Jing to help with the review as well. So we're pretty well staffed on it. Priority-wise, I would consider this a P1 for our group. Enabling out-of-tree volume plugins that are containerized and making CSI work, I think should be a high priority for this group. Does anybody agree, disagree?
Hey, should we have the design as the second item?
Let's just bundle it all into one. It's design and implementation.
Because I was thinking if it's separate, you could have design as priority 1, and then the impl is P2.
Okay, that's fair. Let's do that then. We're going to end up tracking it with the same feature repo bug, which is why I wanted to keep it a single item. But yeah, I'm fine.
Does the design need a feature?
What's that?
Does the design need a feature? I thought.
Oh, that's true. You're right. Okay, so what we could do is create 2 line items, one for the design, one for the implementation. The implementation could be P2, design will be P1, and the feature repo bug will be on the implementation. I'll go ahead and make that.
Sounds good.
That sounds good. So this line item refers to the implementation, which is P2, right? Is it fair to assign that?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, cool. All right, moving on to generic storage topology solution that works well with CSI and local storage. Saad, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, so this is a effort to try to come up with a generic mechanism to handle arbitrary topology in storage. When I say topology, I mean the essentially availability zones. In Kubernetes today, we kind of hack around this for cloud providers. We hacked in the zone and region handling code. It's passed around as an annotation, but it's not very flexible. The code in the scheduler is actually hard-coded to look for those specific annotations and do whatever it needs to do with them. What we want is to be able to handle topology more generically for storage, such that it doesn't matter whether it's region, zone, or it could be on-prem racks or whatever other arbitrary topology it is. Our code should be able to handle it more generically. This is something that I've run into on the CSI side of things. And Michelle's kind of run into this with local storage as well, because ultimately local storage is a topology where you have it boils down to just a single node is the availability zone. So I'd like to work on a design that ties all of this together, and this would be either design or alpha, definitely not beta.
Got it. So maybe we can, whenever we decide on whether it's a design or a feature, we can maybe mention it in the title and have a
there's a column there, target status in 1.9.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and change that to, I'm going to call it design. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
And priority-wise, I would put this as the same priority as CSI, which is 2, so that would be fine.
And does CSI depend on it? Is it a blocker for CSI?
I think we can get CSI without it, but it would be really, really nice. CSI would be incomplete without it.
I see. So I think the only comment I would have is if we have it in design in 1.9, we might not be able to implement the alpha of CSI. Is it a fair statement to make?
We'll be able to get an alpha. It just won't
Okay.
handle
It won't be
topology.
better. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And from the local storage side, I think, Michelle, the same story is true, right?
I think we lost her.
Sorry, what story?
Topology for local storage. If topology doesn't make it to implementation this quarter, it's not going to block local storage, correct?
Yeah, because right now in local storage, we're playing with this topology idea of the persistent volume node affinity. So we're already kind of using that. The only thing it might block is going to beta if we want to come up with a different way of specifying topology.
Got it. Sounds good. Moving on to line item number 8, volume resize, file system resize, more volume types, E2E tests. We don't have an owner yet. Can anyone speak to it?
Yeah, this is Hemant. So we did some work in 1.8. We have already a design merge, so we need to carry on with this work in 1.9. And I would like this to take to beta in 1.9 and add more volume types, GC, AWS, to name a few. And yeah, does it sound fair? Like the priority wise, I think it should be 2. That's what it was in the last quarter as well.
Okay.
Seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, and move to beta in 1.9. And what is your time estimate? Is a release, more than a release?
Like the GA will take obviously more than a release, like 2.0 or something, but beta we should be able to hit in 1.9.
Okay, so let me add R for that. Sounds good. Whenever you get a chance, maybe you can add the reviewer as well. And if anyone wants to volunteer to review this feature, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Moving to line item 9, snapshots to entry alpha.
So this is something I wanted to ask the snapshots team. Is this the goal that we want to shoot for this quarter? How comfortable do you feel with that? Do you think we'll be able to get the appropriate sign-offs, etc.?
I don't know if Jean or Thomas are here. So this is what I mean. So we already have the external snapshots controller, and it's being worked on, and we feel that confidence that during 1.8 it's going to be stabilized, hopefully. Entry API, entry plugins will help us to get the functionalities well tested and reduce a lot of redundancies we have as the external controller.
So I guess my question is, for Q4, do we want to drive this to an entry volume or entry
feature? Yeah.
Feature. Okay.
Alpha will be great to start with.
So the challenge with bringing it entry is we're going to have to make sure that we go through all the appropriate architectural reviews, especially make sure that we run it by the workloads team. I think one of the big outstanding questions around the snapshotting feature is how is it going to integrate with the end-to-end flow? Mm-hmm. And as long as we make sure that we get all those approvals, I think that this would be a reasonable goal.
Okay. So do you have any documents we can start with to start the entry migration?
What do you mean?
So anything we need to sign off first to start with, the paperwork?
So I think we're going to start with a feature repo bug. Okay. That's going to declare this is the work that we intend to do. Then we need to go and create a design doc right. Saying this is the feature that exists out of tree. Here's how it currently works. And here's the proposal for pulling it into tree. We plan to add this controller. We plan to extend the API in this way. And this is the way that it should be used end-to-end by users. That design is going to get reviewed by this storage SIG, and then it should also get reviewed by the workloads team. I believe it's SIG apps, and the API owners, basically.
Okay.
And once
Sounds
we
great.
have those approvals, then we can proceed with implementation.
Okay. I will work with Jim and Thomas to get this done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Moving to the line item number 10, PV taints and tolerations. We don't have owner listed. Can anyone speak to it?
Yeah, so yeah, this is a feature that is very important for local storage. It's something that is on the local storage roadmap, and I'm looking if anyone has cycles to take this up, because I mean, I could take it up, but I can't take it up this quarter.
You can put my name here, B Childs.
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
Sounds good. And what priority do we want to assign to it?
Two.
This is for design phase this quarter, right?
Yeah, I put it as a 2.
Okay, putting it as 2.
And Michelle, do you want to give folks a quick summary of what the feature ask is here?
Yeah. So the main goal for PV taints and tolerations it's sort of similar to the node taints and tolerations feature, mostly used in health monitoring, where you can have some entity monitoring the state of your health of your disks, and if for some reason your disk becomes inaccessible or unhealthy, you can taint it, and then you can set tolerations in your app to specify whether or not your application is capable of releasing its binding on its volume. So the major use case here is for distributed file systems, where they keep multiple replicas of their data, and in case the volume goes down, those applications are perfectly capable of being able to release their volumes, get a brand new one, and rebuild from their replicas.
So this is going to be a really cool feature. I think the challenging part is going to be figuring out what that health probe looks like, but that'll be part of the design.
Sounds good. Moving to line item number 11, local storage static pre-provisional security hardening. Is Cheng Zheng on the line?
Yeah, so to give a bit of background to what this is, currently in the static provisioner has it's running a daemon set, so it's running in every single node, and every single pod has access to creating and deleting modifying PVs, and this is a bit insecure, and we want to limit that scope. So the new design we came up with is to only have that access in master in a trusted node, and then have the pods on every other node as worker nodes. So they will be reading the file system, discovering new volumes, and performing the deletes of provisioner, whereas the master has all the central logic for determining when to trigger discover, when to modify PVs, etc. So right now I have a proposal out, waiting for some review, some opinions, just waiting for some security clearance before I move on to implementing.
Sounds good. Any questions from anyone? Okay. What priority would you assign to it?
This is the top of my radar right now, so I'll put 1.
I think for the storage SIG, though, Michelle, what do you think? Do you think this would be a P1, or should we make it a 2?
I think for alpha, it's not critical, but definitely we need this before we go to beta.
Okay. And since we're not going to beta this quarter, is it okay to keep it as 2?
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
good.
fine.
Okay, sounds good. I'll assign 2 to it. The next one is enable kubectl to expose capacity isolation resource management, which is needed for local ephemeral storage.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure Nick is here or not, but basically it's part of the capacity isolation feature. So I think Nick is working on it, and I will help to review it. And the target is either alpha or beta, because we have some kind of other considerations, but it'll be at least it's alpha. Yeah, it's just part of the capacity isolation feature already working on 1.7 and 1.8, and the priority is 1, or in our, I'm not sure we have 0. No, we don't have 0, so it's 1.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. I think we want to drive capacity isolation resource management to beta in the subsequent quarter, and this is a prereq for that, so seems reasonable.
Sounds good. We might need a feature repo for this. Yeah. Okay, enable kubectl to expose PVC capacity usage stats. Do we have Vaibhav Kamra on the line?
Yeah, hi. So this is a follow-up of work we did in 1.8. This builds on top of it. This is simply to expose the PVC metrics we added through kubectl.
And what is the target status for 1.9?
So I know what the priority should be. I think it's 3. In terms of the target status, I'm not sure what the logistics are of introducing new kubectl commands or APIs. So I don't know if it has to go through an alpha beta workflow. So I'm not able to answer that. Maybe Saad or Jink can help with that.
So yes, since capacity isolation right now is alpha, then yes, it will be alpha, and
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the confusion there is right. I'm not sure what the right way of introducing.
Oh, sorry. Actually, it's not alpha. It's the PVC, like the volume usage stats, is not directly related to capacity isolation.
Yeah.
So if we implement this, it's just GA with like CPU and memory, the same thing as CPU and memory.
Yeah, we'll just that makes sense, but I think we'll just run it by the kubectl folks to verify. But marking it as stable, I think, would be okay.
I'll push a proposal for this, which describes it in more detail, and then we can go from there.
Perfect. And let's get verification from the kubectl team to make sure that we follow their process for alpha, beta, GA.
Okay. Is there a SIG I should be following up, or particular owners?
I follow up with me offline. I'll help you find that.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. Moving to number 14, E2E test for capacity isolation resource management for local ephemeral storage.
It's the same thing with like line 12.
Yeah. Do we need a separate line item for this?
Yeah, so basically capacity isolation resource management, we're going to drive to beta in Q1. This line item is asking for end-to-end tests. I'd mark it as a 1 or a 2, maybe a 2. And it's a bug level work, but we should track it as a separate item. We do need somebody to work on it.
So I think Nick already working on it. There are already some tests for this.
Cool. So we'll move Nick Wren down as the owner for this.
Sounds good. 15, review and improve provision attach mount logs for ease of debuggability.
Yes, so these number 15 and 16, this is kind of a sanity check for improving debuggability of our system. We've added tons of events in the past couple of quarters, and we already have lots of logs that we can use for debugging. It's not entirely clear how useful they are in their current state. So the ask here is for someone to, for line 15, review the logs that we're putting out for things like mount calls, attach calls, provisioning, deleting, etc., and make sure that the right things are getting or making it to the logs, and we have sufficient information for debugging. So 16 is the same thing, except it's asking to do that for events. The ask here would be are we attaching the events to the correct objects? For example, if there is an error on the attach call and an event is generated, is it surfaced to the user in a way that they can use that information and understand what went wrong? So it's more of a examine the system, find where the gaps are, and fill those in. Any volunteers for these two items would be great. This is a nice intro item for someone who's just joining the community, because you get to dig around the whole code base, and it's not extremely difficult to ramp up on.
Yeah, I think I was going to take a look at number 15. This is David, by the way.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I will help David with these items.
Cool.
I can help as well, Hemant here, by the way.
Okay, sounds good. So let me go ahead and list you guys as
Okay, go ahead.
owners and reviewers.
Sounds good. Saad, what priority would you assign to it?
I would make it a 3.
Okay. And target status is more like a bug fix, or?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Got it. Do we need a feature report for this? I guess not.
No.
No, got it. Cool. So this covers, I guess, both 15 and 16.
Yes.
Moving to 17, prevent PVC, PV deletion when pod is using.
I think this is something like we kind of want to have so that user won't lose their data, and it's also a nice feature to have. And similar, like anyone who is interested in this would be good.
You added my name like the preview. I volunteered as reviewer, not as.
Oh.
Yeah, item number 16. Okay. I thought David volunteered for both the items. Correct me if I'm wrong, David. We can take up your name.
I can probably take a look at both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So line 17, we don't have an owner yet.
I can look at it. I think we have some plan to do it. I'm familiar with what needs to be done, so yeah.
And I can help him out.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good. Would you call it a feature or a bug fix?
Bug fix is fine. We have bugs open for it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it may very well turn out to be a feature because of the complexity involved in it.
Right.
Sounds good. Number 18, improve volume management stability.
So there's still some issues with our management, and I have a tab in this document called stability, and list some issues like we discovered so far, and would like to address them, and also internal, external, anyone who would like to look at them, it will be great. So it definitely help to understand our core code base of the module management.
Yeah, so 19 is also kind of related. In particular, like I have me and Jing, we both have logged 2 separate GitHub issues, but they both have the same problem, which is like certain things, certain volumes can go missing from actual state of the world, and they may never get it detached actually, and it requires manual intervention. So
I think improved stability is kind of category, and like the tab stability, we list issues there.
Yeah.
And, we can consolidate all the issues over there, and then prioritize them and try to fix them Yeah.
Yeah, we can delete line 19 and we can just maybe make it as a
So I think it might be worthwhile to actually break the stability item out into multiple actual tasks rather than just a generic stability item, because that's hard to track. The second thing is trying to gauge how gauge the priority for each one of the bug fixes after we break them out, and figuring out how much effort we should be investing in fixing them. I know there are a number of bugs that exist in the system. I'm not sure what their priority is because we don't really understand how frequently they're happening. I would really like this quarter that we invest in improving our metrics and logging to get a better gauge for how frequently these things are happening, and let that feed into the priority for these bugs. But to Hemant and Jing's point, we do have some of these areas identified as there are issues. We're not entirely sure how frequently they happen, and it's worth trying to fix them, but maybe not as a P1. We could mark them as P2. So my two call outs would be, let's break the stability item out into actual items, and then prioritize it so that we're prioritize it low until we have more information.
Sure, we can either use this to like split all the tasks, or just use stability tab to put all the issue and prioritize them. So that, because that might be kind of a long.
Yeah, so I think we should push it into this spreadsheet. The reason being that anything that gets put on a different tab tends to get ignored. And we review this spreadsheet every week, and if we're making progress, it's very evident. If we're not, it's also evident.
Okay, sure, I got it.
So you're saying, Saad, that it makes sense to have it as separate line items in this spreadsheet itself, right?
Yeah, basically, it doesn't necessarily have to be individual bug level, but grouping like items together. For example, I know there's a number of issues around preemptive VMs, node restarts, things like that. So we could group that into one line item into hardening and improving that.
Yeah, I think me and Jing can work together and try to like have separate line items for each type of the category of bugs. But one thing that you mentioned that I don't know, maybe you guys will have time to discuss in face-to-face is like the like how often this is happening. So we won't have like the matrix that we have so far. They will only tell like, okay, volume attach failed, why it failed. Well, we should maybe have a metric of like how many pods are failing to start because of a volume error. I don't know how to capture it, but that'll be a good metric to have.
So, I think it would be great on maybe the SIG storage list if somebody could start a thread that just says ideas on metrics, and maybe we start with a mailing list and just throw in everyone's bag of ideas of useful metrics, and then we can hopefully in 1.9 start finding ways to expose those signals and make them consumable. One of the challenges, so the Google team got together and we were like, 1.9 stability, what do we want to do? And it's really kind of hard to know where to focus, because a lot of our data is very anecdotal.
Right.
And so, we have our ideas of interesting signals that would help us make more intelligent decisions in the future. But the real question is, everybody should be able to contribute to what those signals are for 1.9. So, if anyone wants to go to the list and say, hey, here's the signals that we think are useful, and then add to that, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Hemant, I think to your idea, having some metric around number of pods or something that are failing due to volume issues, that could be an interesting metric. And if we should add something like that to this quarter. I would much rather focus on adding more metrics at this point.
Yes, great. So here we didn't put any metric like exposure item. So should we add?
Yeah, that would actually be great if there's more metrics that we can add. Let's think through that. We can do it offline and then review it in the next meeting.
Okay.
Could you perhaps indicate where this existing list of signals is?
We have, this is Hemant Bhai. Yeah, we have like last quarter we implemented the volume operation matrix. Previous quarter we added cloud provider storage matrix. And then we added, last quarter we added the PVC matrix. Like, so we have consistently been adding the matrix. We haven't been listing them in one place because sometimes they change name. So maybe we should list them and that could be an item itself. But that's the three kind of matrix that I'm aware of that we have added.
So this is where my ignorance of the Kubernetes code comes loud and clear. In the kernel, I know that there's trace points, and you can always, programmatically probe and find a list of trace points that let you understand where you can collect and gather signals for the future. And there's like 3 subsystems to do that, though I think they're converged a while back. When we put in these signals today, is there any programmatic way to find that list or even filter for the ones that we think are interesting to focus on storage?
Yeah, there's a URL you can curl actually and that just gives you all the list of all the available metrics that we have, and we can use them. So that's
in this case, is we all of the Kubernetes system or just the volume or storage focused ones?
Just all the signals or all the metrics by Kubernetes, not just the storage ones.
So you're talking about on the node, right? The
node or controller, both, right?
Both, yeah, right. We kind of like at the endpoint, you can query that.
So this is the part where I feel sometimes things, stop too soon, possibly. When you're an engineer and you're a developer, that's really great because you understand the system and you understand the code layout really well. But if you are a, let's say a support engineer or a cluster admin, something's going on with your volumes. And you're not really sure what or why, and you don't know where to look. All of those signals may be way too much to juggle. So is there some way that we can either come up with, I don't want to say a script, but some filter or even something that we can put on the, a GitHub page that says, do you want to debug you're having trouble with storage? These are the things that you can do to look at the signals that we now have in place to filter through, and you can see, oh, look, error here, as opposed to, let's assume that there are lots of errors in other areas and you may get confused by too many signals at once.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, good to have that document after we add more metrics. Right now, there's no documentation really explain. Even the metrics we added right now, there's no good documentation.
So I guess I've got 2 points. One is if we don't understand how we're going to do that, just adding the signals is, maybe premature. Like we should probably figure out how we want to consume them before we, as we're thinking, let me organize my thoughts. Now seems like a good time to come up with a high level list of all of the areas that we think we're adding signals will be helpful. But then before we start truly injecting all of them, we should probably consider also how we think we expect different user levels to consume them.
Yeah, I mean, in the form of documentation, just perhaps how to even hook them up to things like Zipt and Jaeger, if that's what you typically do with them. Kind of a how-to of how to consume them, not just what the list is.
Yeah, I have documented some in the previous release how to consume them and how to read them. Like there's a documentation on kubernetes.io, but it's not exhaustive, and there was some resistance from SIG instrumentation folks about listing individual metrics in a page because it changes.
That's my point. I think that if we end up listing them, it's immediately going to get out of date. I think that if we could come up with a way to, programmatically tag and collect.
I think some of that actually could be on the side of folks who are actually running the Kubernetes cluster. The first and most important part is actually surfacing the metrics. The second part is collecting them and then making them easy to view. The part that Hemant has worked on is been surfacing it, and I think that belongs in the open source side of things. I think how you surface it, how you collect it, can actually be on the specific to each deployment.
But my point is, someone just said earlier that they had talked to SIG instrumentation. Who was that? Okay, so maybe would you mind? Did they provide you with the sort of here's how to do it, or is that still up in the air on their side? Because we should probably align with whatever SIG instrumentation wants to do.
No, I think we haven't provided any specific guideline about that. So I'm sorry. So yeah, so we need to. Now I would like to talk to them again maybe and get an idea so okay, how do we it's too hard right now to figure out what those endpoints are, call endpoints, where the metrics are. Is how to set them up. It's too difficult. So I would like to talk to them again. I think I can do that this quarter and figure out if we can find a way to programmatically generate those documents rather than have a static page or static document. So, but I don't know if they will have a immediate solution. It's a solution that is, as Saad said, is deployment specific. How one deploys Kubernetes, how it could be deployment specific. So, but
can you find out and come back for the next meeting?
Yeah.
And so, are the metrics prepended with something to indicate that they're storage metrics, so it's easy to filter on those? Are you saying the piece that's hard to set up is the actual gathering infrastructure, not adding the pieces of storage we care about? Is it divided out that way? I guess, can we have a demo of it?
Yeah, we can do, but not all metrics necessarily have a storage word in it. So some do, some do, some don't.
But it sounds like we have a lot of questions about how to consume these metrics. Can anyone volunteer that maybe the next SIG storage to give a demo? I think Aaron has a great idea, so that we can all sit down and see how it's done. And if that person can also reach out to SIG instrumentation and hear if they're ready to give any guidance, that would be great.
So I think I can help and Hemant to work with them. Yeah, before we exchange some email, I think the SIG instrument also making changes, so we need to work with them together for this metric exposure. Yeah.
Is that Hemant? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm perfect. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that sounds like a great action item. So that sounds like there's two. One is come up with a list of the signals that we want to see that we think will be helpful, and then Hemant and Jing can come back next meeting with a mini demo of or a presentation or just a report of how we feel they should be consumed or where we are today.
Yeah, good.
Sounds good. So I think line item 18 and 19 would connect to 23 then. So we want to have all the bug fixes and some of the issues that we're getting to be surfacing these metrics into account for thinking about how do we want to plan and prioritize them. We already talked a bit about number 20, which is enabling raw block for local storage. If there's nothing more to add, then we can move on to 21. So on 21, it is encryption of emptydir. We don't have owners yet.
So this was a line item I added. I would prioritize this as P3. It's a cool, fun item to investigate and design and maybe push to alpha this quarter if we have the bandwidth. The idea here is currently we create an emptydir when a pod starts. It exists for the life cycle of the pod. Then we delete it. If anybody else gets access to that machine, or for some reason that data doesn't get cleaned up, all that information is sitting unencrypted and available to everyone. The suggestion is to possibly use file system encryption to encrypt the directory when we create it, and put that encryption key in the kernel ring. And so if for any reason the data is not cleaned up, perhaps because kubelet crashed or for whatever reason, or somebody else gets access to the actual local host disk, they won't necessarily have access to the data that was written in that emptydir. We would have to design this to be an opt-in feature because it would necessarily break some of the assumptions about emptydir around lifecycle, but that could be hammered out in the design. It's a cool, fun feature to work on. I think David on our team was interested in taking a look at it. I'm not sure if you're still interested, David.
Yeah, I'm still interested. I thought we weren't going to do that this quarter, but if we are, then
I'm just going to put it on the list as a low pri item if we run out of things to work on.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great.
Sounds good. Backup of PVs, number 22 seems pretty connected to snapshots that we discussed earlier. Can we talk about the scope of the two items and if there are any potential overlaps?
Hi, this is Tushar. I added this item and I tried searching for, I searched through all the planning items. I couldn't find an explicit item about this. And just to give a background and about this request. So, so far SIG Storage I feel is focusing majorly on persistent storage and we have talked about few aspects of availability like replication. I don't know, it is my ignorance if the backup has been talked about maybe. I'm not aware of it. And what I see is that customers who are using Kubernetes are actively talking about it. We have some backup vendors who have reached out to us, VMware, how we can do this. So I see a clear need. And what I see is that, this is not a vSphere cloud provider problem alone. It is a general cloud provider problem. And this is something we would like to help out in designing. So that's the background.
What do you want to design? What is the problem that you want to solve?
So I'll post a link to the issue also. So there is a customer request that came to us saying that I want to back up my PVs. That I want to back up my PVs and it is currently not possible to back up through most of the backup programs like Veeam because cloud provider is in persistent independent mode. So this is the background.
Really? I thought that there was a lot of technologies out there that would allow you to back up from cloud providers and even sync two ways. And my other question is, are we sure that this is functionality that belongs in the Kubernetes control plane? Is that what you're suggesting, or just suggesting to have any sort of guidebook or suggestion of how to do this even outside of it?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the issue that got filed to us by a customer was yesterday. And I just looked through it and I didn't see any issues. So I'm open to suggestions. If you guys think, and we haven't thought deeply about it, but by the time we show up for the face-to-face meeting, we would come up with some proposal by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
This feels like a great segue to talk to introduce someone who I know is muted in the room right now. There's a new Googler, not a new Googler, someone who's been around Google for a while, but a new member of the SIG whose name's Alfred. Alfred, are you there? In any case, I think he may be muted and listening. Alfred Fuller is one of the storage experts in Google who knows a lot about what's been going on in sort of outside of Google and on-prem environments. And we've asked him to, also be around to just do, to be a participant in the SIG. And he has said that he has got the time and will be able to be focused. So if you, please make him feel welcome. And he's got a lot of experience in both building storage systems and storage APIs. He's probably going to be focusing on snapshots with Jing. And I think that's it. But for questions like the one that you just asked about and, what's available for backups in cloud providers, it might be another area where he might either have expertise or know someone who does. And I think I saw you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I'm definitely very interested. It seems like you guys are looking at a lot of good things to augment Kubernetes, and I'm happy to help.
So I think the idea of coming up with a proposal for the face-to-face sounds great, and it also may be something that Alfred might be able to contribute to too.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
No, thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay, priority-wise, can we assign something here? I'd like to understand how this is different from snapshots. It sounds like we're going to get a lot more clarity as we approach the face-to-face. So maybe we could leave it unprioritized until then.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we've covered all the items. So over to you, Saad.
Okay, cool. We are just about out of time. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to do the demo that Eric had planned today for his Docker volume driver, Flex driver. But we're going to put him first thing at the next meeting so that we have enough time for that. Last thing I wanted to mention was the face-to-face meeting. It is going to be October 10th and 11th. The location has been confirmed. It is at the Google office in San Francisco. The details are linked in the agenda document, so please take a look at that. The event has hit capacity, unfortunately. So if you haven't RSVP'd and you're still interested in attending, you can add yourself to the remote attendees list. And if anybody drops out, we can pull folks in, but otherwise we'll have a Zoom set up in the meeting room for folks who are going to be able to attend remotely. And I believe Dell EMC and Portworx are going to be hosting a dinner the first day. Steve, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I'm mobile and traveling right now, so I wasn't able to paste map coordinates, but I'll do that when I get connected better. Also, if those who are going to actually go to the dinner can add the text plus dinner after their name so we can get an exact head count, that would help out a lot.
Cool, sounds good. I think that's all I had. I had an item from Michael Rubin about growing the SIG storage community. Michael, would you be okay punting that to the next meeting?
Yeah, I think we may even want to do, our agenda is getting so packed now, it may make sense to almost order the agenda on email before the meeting. It's definitely a bummer that someone had a demo all prepped and we didn't get it done as we were sort of enumerating over the priorities of planning so much. So yeah. I think it's cool. I think that mine could maybe wait a little bit if we have demos and instrumentation reports that we want to have. So maybe we can send a mail for the large items, and almost at the point where the community meetings are, where we want to give guesstimates and time box some of the items that we're discussing, because there's just too much cool things happening. This SIG is pretty healthy and successful.
We're doing every other week. Should we do that if SIG meeting next week maybe?
Let's try time boxing first and then see what happens. Because, I honestly, Brad, I think we like each other so much, and when there's so much stuff to do, we could do this almost every day and still have cool stuff to talk about.
I agree. 4 hours a day would be good with me.
Yeah, I understand.
The time boxing idea, I think, is really good. And maybe we can start sending out agenda. Agenda doc is open for anybody to add ahead of time, but maybe let's start adding estimated time so that it'll be easier to plan ahead of time.
Yeah, I think the community meeting, the way that's being run, I feel is pretty fair and successful, and it forces people to organize what they're going to say ahead of time, and makes the best use of this time, because there's so many people in this room right now that it feels like this time is precious.
Yep, that's fair. All right, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? All right, thank you very much. We'll call it for today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you.
See